I got a question from a friend of Bunjie, Marco, asking me, hey Rich, I want to buy an Excalibur for its simplicity. Which Excalibur would you recommend? That's a great question. In 2025, we got a bunch of Excalibur options to choose from. Excalibur is the exciting company of 2025. Times change, right? I say that all the time. The last couple of years I've been saying that, but wow, you know, I've been kind of rough on Excalibur, kind of hard on them for not coming up with new models, for not coming up with new products over the years, and you know, repackaging older models and pretending that it's new when it's still shooting a 350 grain arrow and still not shooting modern crossbow speeds. But we saw this year that Excalibur really can compete with the big boys in the modern crossbow era. Can they not? I mean, come on. The Hybrid-X from Excalibur. Look at this guy, right? It's got the reverse limbs, a reverse limb crossbow from Excalibur, and it's still a recurved crossbow, even though it's got cams. You can change the strings and cables on your own. You don't need a press. I proved it. I did it myself, but I put the little blue marks on there for those of you who are following those videos, and now the strings have settled right in exactly where they gotta be. Got a video here during Crossbow Appreciation Month about using presses, and timing is a big issue. They've resolved an awful lot of that by mounting the cams to the barrel. It's a really good design. Excalibur went from me kind of being hard on them about not coming up with new ideas to holy cow, look at this new idea. Man, I love this thing. And this one gets its speed from a 400 grain arrow, like the modern crossbows do. Can't wait for the lighted nock so I can hunt with this bad boy. Now, as a friend of Bunjie, you are well aware that I am an Excalibur fanboy. I have my wyvernized Excalibur hat on for this video. But also, if you look here, that's Bunjie, right? And Bunjie is an Excalibur Axiom hanging on the wall behind me. 16 years, just killed a bear in its 16th season. Same crossbow for 16 seasons, right? That's Excalibur, not just simplicity. That's like the most simple crossbow there is. It's like 3 pieces of carbon fiber or something in a string. Like that's what that crossbow is, right? It's simplicity defined. Today's crossbows, let's face it, are not as simple as that, right? And that's probably a good thing. We've got modern advancements. They have many more features, which we refer to as denser in our analysis of smaller, faster, lighter, denser, and cheaper. Remember all that discussion? That is denser. When you get the more modern crossbows, like we're gonna look at here on my laptop that I got in front of me, we have more features, and that's denser. It's feature rich. And we need those features, right? We need technological advancements and improvements. Here we are in ExcaliburCrossbow.com. We are greeted with accessory fit chart to view compatibility. I don't like the pop-ups, but I can tell you that it's important to have a compatibility chart for accessories, because as crossbows improve, stuff that fits on that crossbow doesn't fit on the more modern crossbows. It's just a fact, right? So we have to keep that in mind. And that's just a thing. That's a thing. If we go to crossbows though, because we're just going to jump right in here. Here are our various crossbows, the various crossbows from Excalibur. And right up front, we got the Hybrid-X. I love that crossbow. I'm so glad they did it. And they're calling it the Hybrid Series. I hope that means we have more of them coming down the road. I hope it sells so well that Excalibur says, you know, this is a platform that we want to invest in and make even better. We also have the Dual Fire series, the Twin Strike series. Now, they have not added to that. So just that the fact that they've listed a hybrid series doesn't mean that they're going to make a series and make more of them, because there's a dual fire series and there's only one dual fire in there. They did make a different dual fire before that, the Twin Strike, but now the TAC 2 comes out. We have a RevX series, a single crossbow, the RevX, which I believe is a really big seller. Okay, so let's go through these things and look at them. If we look over here, we do have that Mag 340 over here. The Mag 340, if we click on that and look at that crossbow, this is a smaller version of Bunjie. This is the most simplistic that they sell in this day and age, really. Starts at $799. I can tell you, right, 340 feet per second, and every one of these, with the exception of that Hybrid-X, every single one of these crossbows is going to get its speed with a 350 grain arrow. That's not realistic in this day and age. I wouldn't shoot one of these crossbows, let alone hunt with it, with a 350 grain arrow. I'd be using that arrow with a 150 grain field point or broadhead, will give you a 400 grain arrow. And that's a modern arrow with a crossbow that has this kind of draw weight and energy. You need to absorb that into a heavier arrow like a 400 grainer or above. At least use 150 grain head on the arrows that come with it and you should be okay. But your crossbow will thank you, especially a recurve crossbow will thank you if you increase that arrow weight a bit more. Genevieve's shooting like 535 grains now. It slows the crossbow down considerably. So you're not getting that 340 feet per second. In her case, her 355 micro suppressor with a 535 grain arrow, I think shoots around 300 feet per second. Now, her short shots on a bear, for example, totally okay. Shooting 10, 15 yards at a bear, right? Or 20 yards. That's fine. That's fine. It's enough. It's enough speed, but it's the energy that it produces and gets her into the 0.7 slugs of momentum category that I like. That's valuable, right? Use our calculators on deathbybungie.com to see what I'm talking about there. Watch some other videos. It's good stuff. We got this Mag 340 right here though, and this is a nice crossbow. I can tell you there are two crossbows on here in particular that have a big following, and this is one of them. This crossbow, they have sold a lot of apparently because on Facebook groups that I'm part of, on the forums and whatnot, it just has a lot of people bragging about this crossbow and loving on this crossbow. They have their issues with limbs, but they don't have all the issues that some of the other ones have with limbs because they are, and it says right here, workhorse crossbow with a lifetime dependability. You can replace the limbs on these pretty easily if the limbs blow out on you or whatever, but they've really adjusted the hardware over the years and made limbs a little differently and fixed a lot of the limb problems. So the limb problems, and I mean this, okay, 5 years ago, I was doing a series of videos on breaking limbs because it was so prominent, so prevalent amongst modern crossbows at the time, not just Excalibur, but across the board. We really don't hear about the breaking limbs as much anymore. Most of those are resolved, it seems like, and it seems to be either more operator error or accidental stuff, or just a manufacturing defect that needs to be addressed, that's all. But like a one-on-one, limb-by-limb manufacturer defect, not like the whole lot of them, you understand, not the entire design. They really have fixed these things where we don't hear about that nearly as much as we used to. These crossbows, enough of them are out there that, to me, if you can get your hands on a Mag 340, I would not hesitate to use this for most modern hunting circumstances if you're using the heavier arrow and you're keeping your shots real short, right? We're talking 20 yards, 25 yards and in, maybe a 30-yard shot if you want to play around with aiming points, but that's not my way of doing business, okay? I don't like to do that. So to me, this with a heavier arrow is going to put you, you're going to be around 300 feet per second, maybe a little bit slower with that heavier arrow that I would use on this, 500 grains plus. And if you're willing to do that, this is a great crossbow. This can be a great crossbow. And it's not expensive. It's $7.99, which for an Excalibur, for an entry-level Excalibur, that's pretty good. That's their entry-level price in this day and age. And I would personally, let's look here. I don't see any rubber on the string. Very good. I don't like rubber on the string. I do see these suppressors right here that it's got. If you look, and I've got the mouse over here on the left on it, but you can see a bigger picture on the right on my screen. But those rubber dampeners, I have those on here too. Those are the reds, I think, the suppressors where it hits the limb, the string hits that and it just touches it just a little bit, just enough to absorb some of that and slow the vibration down of that string. It doesn't stop it immediately. So we're not dumping all of that energy all at once into the crossbow, but it is slowing it down so it reduces vibration, helps you get more comfortable shooting, and makes you a better shot. You could upgrade your stirrup on this crossbow over time, buy one of the rubberized Bigfoot stirrups from somebody. You can get an add-on stirrup, or you can get one from Excalibur. I think they still sell those. And if you get a rubberized stirrup with a bigger foot on it, you'll probably be glad that you did that. It will also protect your 3-inch Swhacker. You can see that the field point sticks out past the riser. Gives you plenty of room with a bigger stirrup to protect your broadhead so you're not getting it caught on branches, and protect it if you set it on the ground. That way when you put your 3-inch Swhacker on there, your number 243 3-inch Swhacker that you're going to put on there, the 150 grainer, you will be okay. And you're going to type in coupon code Bunjie 2025 and get yourself some of those 3-inch Swhackers, aren't you? Right? And if you're not going to do that, you need to go rewatch my Swhacker video during Crossbow Appreciation Month of 2025, right? Because it's awesome. And because it shows Genevieve's bear's blood trail, like, happen in real time. It's just Phenomenal. You got to watch that. So I love those Swhackers, I do. And I love the Swhacker Excalibur combination. I really do. Like this crossbow, man, it's a dream, right? It's a dream. But anyway, we do that on this bad boy. We shoot this thing and we are in good shape. You can get it done if you are realistic about your hunting ranges. So this is one that would be on my list of crossbows that I would likely pick. The Hybrid-X for a modern crossbow is, to me, a no-brainer, short of those lighted nocks. I like my Luminox, right? As long as we're plugging things that I like. And again, these people are not paying me to say this, but I am telling you that I also use coupon code Bunjie on luminox.com when I buy my Luminox, right? I have a lot of crossbows and I really prefer crossbows that will accept a Burt Coyote Luminox because I love those nocks. It's just, they're so simple and perfect. And they complement an Excalibur crossbow arrow perfectly. With a Mag Air, this is one I would avoid. I would not buy this. This is too underpowered for me, right? It is the cheapest one we're going to see here, the 579. I don't even consider this really a hunting crossbow because it's only 305 feet per second. You can get it done. You can get it done. And it is light. And for certain people, that's probably going to be appropriate. It is a rope cocker. But the problem with this guy, and you can put a crank on it too, but the problem with this guy really is that it is 305 feet per second with a 350 grain arrow. That's Bunjie speeds out of the box. Like that's not gonna cut it, right? You're gonna be shooting, if this will handle it, you can put that heavier arrow on there and get it up into that 0.7 slugs of momentum category. I wouldn't hunt with it without that, but now you've limited your shots. Like I don't feel comfortable shooting that at deer past 20 yards. Bunjie. Like I'm not gonna do that. That's not my future, the future for me. Like I don't really feel comfortable doing that. So it depends on what you want. If you're willing to accept those limitations, that's fine. But the question was, what one would I recommend? And it is not that one. So that's I'm only going to be honest with you and give my honest opinion. That's all I got, right? This is Death by Bunjie. And all I have is my honest opinion. I'm going to be as honest and sincere and transparent, to use a modern word, I guess, as possible, so that you know what I think. And I think that that's what you want out of me. So that's what you get. The Mag Max, now that is really the Mag 340. If you look at, I do like this camo, the up and down camo, because to me that makes more sense. This up and down camo matches trees and bark and stuff like that. I kind of like that. And nonetheless, these are smaller crossbows. They're not quite as big. The camo becomes less important the smaller the crossbow gets, I think, in my opinion. If we look at this here, 350 feet per second instead of 340, still with the 350 grain arrow. You're still going to want to up the arrow weight, but you're going to gain 10 feet per second. You're probably just a touch under 300 feet per second with a 535 grain arrow. And you might have to add a little bit more weight to get to that 0.7 slugs of momentum, but that is a number that I appreciate and prefer in 2025. And I've just seen that success with my bears and Genevieve's bear, and the difference between 500 grains and 635 grains on that crossbow is just enormous and beautiful. And that's why I'm a 0.7 slugs of momentum or better guy, okay? When we look at the micro series, keeping in mind, these are micro limb crossbows, but they don't fall under this micro series list. The micro extreme, I kind of like the fact this doesn't have all the rubber doodads on the limbs or on the string. I kind of like that. So what we're getting out of there, if we look at the specs, 360 feet per second. You've upped it a little bit more. This one does get you over the 300 feet per second, most likely with a 535 or so grain arrow. Might be able to do a 550 at 300. That's pretty cool. These aren't necessarily modern speeds, but you can at least get modern energy. You might not have the speed necessary to shoot longer distances, 30, 40 yards at a deer, for example, but I wouldn't hesitate to shoot 20 and under or 25 and under with that crossbow with a proper arrow weight. I think you'd be all right, depending on the circumstances and the hunting, right? It's gonna depend on other things, but you could get that done. The Suppressor Extreme, I think we're in the same category here, but what I will say about the Suppressor Extreme, we see the rubber on the limbs and we see the rubber on the string. You can buy that stuff as add-ons and put it on a crossbow without buying this package. But to me, I've had this stuff and I threw it away. I don't want it. Like I don't put that on stuff. Just use a heavier arrow. You don't need that. That's stuff that gets in the way. I actually had accuracy issues because of these string stars, because they deteriorated. One of them fell off, whereas the other one didn't fall off, and it was pulling more on one side than the other, I suspect, and that created some problems for me. And I had these things right here, all they do is reduce vibration, but a heavier arrow does the same thing. Just put the heavier arrow on here. You know, I've done plenty of videos on that, but that stuff is history for me. I don't do that anymore. So this crossbow, you know, especially because here, if you look at this, right, we'll look at this image, you'll see what I'm talking about. We've got this rubber on the limbs here, and then this rubber on the limbs also. These things are worthless. You got to glue them on with Gorilla Glue if you want them to stay. In my opinion, I don't think that those are worth having. And when you've got a crossbow that is this challenged as far as speed is concerned already, making the limbs heavier by adding weight to the string and the limbs in the form of rubber only slows it down more. Doesn't give you anything in return except it makes you feel better because it's kind of quieter. But you've now made the crossbow slower, so it's still loud enough to alert deer. It's now slower to give them more time to react. That's counterintuitive. Don't do that. Add the heavier arrow, you'll get the same benefit in reduced vibration. It makes you feel better because you're not shooting this thing that's obnoxious. But at the same time, you're going to get the added penetration. Okay, very important. And that's my honest opinion, and I think that this stuff, I wouldn't buy one of these. I wouldn't spend extra on that. I would, if I had that crossbow, Genevieve's crossbow came with that stuff, and I took it all off. And I put it all on that crossbow once when I was experimenting with it a decade ago or more, and I've taken it all, like I don't even own that stuff anymore, I throw it away. Rubber on the stirrup, rubber on those little pads that stop the string a little bit, like that stuff doesn't bother me. But I don't want to get into rubber on the limbs that slows the crossbow down. Just use a heavier arrow. Just get a heavier arrow. The twin strike, we're not going to look at that. I don't recommend anybody get one of those. It's a neat idea, but it's really not for me, so I'm not going to look at that. I wouldn't recommend that. The Assassin Extreme, now we're into the old flagship Assassin, and I can tell you these are cool crossbows. Built-in crank. You're going to want to lift one of these up, use it, shoot it at the shop or something, handle it a little bit. It's a little heavier because of the built-in crank. So you're going to have to be mindful of that and thinking about that. I've never owned one of these. I've shot them. I do appreciate them, and there's a place for these, and this was a flagship for a long time. Actually considered buying one at one point, but I would go, instead of getting an Assassin Extreme at this point, when we're looking at the cost of $13.99, if we look at the RevX, and go down here, for speed wise, we've got 400 feet per second, and we're looking at $15.99. So 200 bucks more, you get the most modern crossbow out there. And this one does have an internal crank, but look at it. Would you look at that?
Yeah, well.
Would you look at that?
Yeah, there's a few more blemishes on the car.
Oh my gosh, just look at it.
That internal crank is much less visible, and doesn't seem to take up as much, okay? It's kind of like the internal crank on the Hybrid-X, that internal crank. It's the same style thing. And I really, really like that crank. I do. I'm not a crank guy, but if I was a crank guy, this is the crank I bought, right? I bought a Hybrid-X because of the crank in part. And so that's a good one, right? We're into the crossbows where you can't rope cock them anymore. We're into crossbows where you're cranking them. And this is a good one to crank. Now this also, you can see it's got the rubber on the limbs and all that jazz. With these real high speed ones, like on the Hybrid-X, shooting it without the rubber, I still get really good speeds with the rubber. Okay, I got little rubber doodads on the limbs there. That's okay, because you've still got the high speeds. Here we're getting 400 feet per second. I would up the arrow weight and get rid of those, personally, okay? That's what I would do. And I would absolutely not be hunting with stuff on the strings. This does appear to have the string stars. Look, is that a string star? Yeah, there's a star on the string there, and I don't like those right there in the middle of that big picture. And I don't like those. I would take that off, and I would get rid of the rubber on the limbs and not worry about that stuff. That's just not my thing. I'm not going to do that, okay? But I do like this crossbow. I like its specs, and I like the handling of it. It's a little different from the other Excaliburs, and some people don't like the handling of it. I will say also that I've heard a lot of broken limbs on this crossbow compared to other Excalibur models in the modern era. But they've sold a lot of these because speed sells. Because we're modern crossbow hunters and we want modern speeds, not because we're suckers. It's because we want modern speeds. It's not too much to ask, right? When Raven's making, everything they make is 400 feet per second and above just about, you know, and an Excalibur finally makes a 400 feet per second crossbow, even though it's still with a 350 grain arrow. But that's what people are looking for. And you do get that with this. Maybe you buy an extra set of limbs and be prepared for a breakage or something. But I don't think there's anything about the design of this crossbow that concerns me that says this crossbow is designed poorly and therefore I would not buy it. I would, if I was buying an Excalibur right now, I would look at the RevX. That would be one that I would look at. So if we go back to this list on the main page, I can tell you out of this list, I would look at the Hybrid-X or the RevX if you've got enough money and you can afford that, right? Those are pricey options. But that Hybrid-X I really, really like. If you want the lighted nocks, you got to go with the RevX. That would be a better one to hunt with, in my opinion. So those are two that I would choose out of that left-hand column. I would jump from the Assassin Extreme to these other models if I were looking for another Excalibur crossbow. And in fact, I bought this year the Hybrid-X. So there you go, right? I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Now, in the other categories, one in the middle I probably would avoid. Maybe I'd look at the Micro Extreme, but the other two on that list I probably would not be interested in. The Twin Strike doesn't interest me, and the Suppressor Extreme, I don't like the rubber, I'm not gonna pay extra for that, but the Micro Extreme, I think that's a pretty interesting crossbow, and I would be interested in that if you're gonna be limiting your shots more and you take that into account and you wanna up your arrow weight. And then when we look at the mag series, okay, your Mag Max, your Mag Air, and your Mag 340, out of those, really the Mag 340 or the Mag Max, I think you get a few updates with the Mag Max. You only get 10 feet per second more, but 10 feet per second is 10 feet per second, right? I mean, it can't hurt to have that added speed. It gives you a little more room to up your arrow weight and have, be over the 300 feet per second mark maybe. And that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It's not the modern era of crossbow speeds, but it's still pretty good. It's better than less than that, right? And talking to a guy, I've shot deer everywhere from 245 feet per second up to 420 feet per second, like that whole range. And I can tell you there's no comparison. The faster the better. Like speed is just so much better when you're hunting deer. And on bears, you can get away with the slow guy, right? But on the deers, you want the faster stuff. So that's what I'm looking at here. You want my opinion, which is what you asked for and what you get. That's all I got for you. That's all I got for you. But I'm thinking Mag 340, Mag Max, or let's jump over to maybe the Micro Extreme. And then on the last category there, if you got the money, the RevX or that Hybrid-X, those are some smoking crossbows from Excalibur. And the future for Excalibur, I'm pretty excited about it. I'm pretty excited about it because they have proved to the world that they're willing to enter the modern era. And they're doing it. They're doing it. Until next time, all hail the old, slow, huge, obnoxious Bunjie.